On April 22nd, that narrative of normalcy was demolished. A surreal selfie video, recorded by a tourist on a zip line, captured a horrifying attack in which 26 tourists, almost all of them Indian, were chased down by militants and executed.
They not only came deep inside the Indian territory, they also took their own sweet time in segregating all the people based on religion, and they landed up killing the Hindus. We never really thought that, especially the way the tourism had been picking up in these regions, that we would see this kind of a setback.
And tourism was a big part of this normalcy narrative because people were encouraged to come to Jammu and Kashmir. The sense of normalcy, people who lived in Jammu and Kashmir, they knew that this is not really the story, that there is this tension underneath the calm. There was a feeling that this calm is just on the surface and there's something underneath just waiting to come out.
The government has been trying to claim that terrorism has been replaced by tourism, because BJP have been talking about a solution of Kashmir through changing the demography of the region. Kashmir is the only Muslim majority region in India, and for them the only resolution of Kashmir is to alter its demography.
In 2019, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government took a big step in that direction. A constitutional clause granting Kashmir a unique semi-autonomous status was suspended, bringing the state under New Delhi's control.
One nation, one constitution.
Then the electoral map was altered, resulting in Jammu, the Hindu-majority region, gaining greater political influence at the expense of the Kashmir Valley, which has a Muslim majority. Other changes have loosened restrictions on non-Kashmiris from settling in the state, leading to allegations that the Modi government was out to permanently change the region's demographics. Significant, newsworthy developments, all taking place with journalists facing more and more suppression, and Muslim Kashmiris coming under all kinds of surveillance.
The media has paid in Kashmir a particularly heavy price. Dozens of journalists have been picked up, charged with serious crimes like sedition, booked under the anti-terror law. They would get bail and they would come out only to be jailed again. So floods of tourists were coming in and all of that. But there was also a sense that this was a kind of enforced normalcy.
Ever since 2019, there has been an excessive suppression of Kashmiris under military jackboots through panoptic surveillance, which also exists in the digital space. Civil society has been decimated, journalists have been silenced, a narrative has been presented as if, entire Kashmir is complicit in this kind of a conspiracy. More than 1,500 people have been arrested. Houses of alleged terrorists have been demolished without an investigation. So there is a larger collective punishment which is also triggering fear in rest of the population.
Because there's this demand for instant justice. Let's get on with it. Let's punish somebody. There isn't enough of a backlash against those government actions. And now those demolitions have stopped because the security forces realized that this is not helping them. And of course, India has blamed Pakistan for these attacks. So there's now a full-on warmongering on television.
With more than 400 Indian news channels on the front lines. In such a crowded media space, crammed with channels competing for viewers and revenues, sensationalist reporting and hyper-nationalistic takes on politics have long dominated the news output.
Bharat is getting battle ready for revenge. It is time for Pakistan to pay back for Pahalgam carnage.
Networks like Republic TV, Times Now, India Today, and Z News are blaming Pakistan for the killings in Kashmir, calling for military retaliation.
The Hindus who were hunted for simply being Hindus in Pahalgam by Pakistan-sponsored Islamist terror groups and their facilitators in India are the children of a lesser god.
and they're producing anti-Muslim news content, dangerous and provocative commentary that aligns with the Modi government's Hindu nationalist agenda. That matters because so many Indian news outlets are now dependent on government advertising revenues to stay in business. All of which explains why the focus of the coverage has not been on the security failures that led to the atrocity, let alone holding the Modi government accountable.
The media currently is guilty of constant warmongering to inflame temper, painting these almost cartoonish scenarios of how India is going to invade Pakistan.
वैसे तो पाकिस्तान को नींद नहीं आ रही है, बुरे-बुरे सपने आ रहे हैं, पता नहीं कब कौन सा बम कहां से आकर गिर जाए.
That is not at all what responsible journalism is meant to be. There is also a worrying parallel spike in Islamophobia. And this latest attack in Kashmir has given rein to those using it to wrongfully target Indian Muslims.
This monster is a creation of the government. Now, the question is whether the government is now incapable of putting back the genie in the bottle, or does it want to deliberately promote it? Much of these social media handles perpetuating hate have been trying to attack Muslims, particularly Kashmiri Muslims, Kashmiri students, to the point that many students had to flee because the governments in those states failed to provide them any protection.
The mainstream coverage has been jingoistic, has been extremely aggressive, and perhaps what we are not realizing is that this perhaps is what the terrorists want, because the very basis of this attack is hatred. It's segregating people on the basis of religion and killing. The response has been full of anger, but there should be a much more educated response on what really have been our intelligence failures, because for sure there has been one.
This potential conflict between two nuclear powers has India and Pakistan's combined populations now approaching 1.7 billion people on edge. They have reason to be, particularly when Indian news outlets repeatedly refer to a war now being fought overseas, a genocidal one.
Tonight, we show you how the April 22 attack in Kashmir echoes the horror of October 7th.
When Narendra Modi spoke earlier this week, he stayed away from the question of Indian security failures in Kashmir, and then did something he seldom does, switching from Hindi to English to deliver a message to an outside audience.
India will punish every terrorist. We will pursue them to the ends of the earth.
And it was quite clear that by switching to English, he was addressing the international community, much as Benjamin Netanyahu has done repeatedly to say that, look, this is a serious crime and we will have the full license to do what we want. The parallels suggest, as is the case with Israel and Gaza, that all bets should be off, and that is something we have to be somewhat careful about.
Kashmiris have always lived with a sense of fear and insecurity that India may try and change its demography, and that's because Hindu right-wing groups have always tried to peddle that as a solution to the Kashmir issue.
You need an Israel-like solution to Kashmir.
And every time that there is rhetoric about an Israel-like situation, there is a sense of pain, but even more than that, there is a sense of fear.
Across the border in Pakistan, the narrative on what happened in Kashmir, where this could lead, has been dominated by some unelected men in uniforms, and much of the mainstream media there have already fallen into line. Ryan Coles is here with more.
The Pakistani military spin machine kicked into gear immediately after the attack in Kashmir, starting with the argument that India has not provided any concrete evidence, not publicly, that Pakistan was behind the attack.
There have been no shred of evidence that has been provided.
The Pakistan Intelligence Service's chief spokesperson called India's allegations baseless, then accused it of masterminding and supporting terror attacks in Pakistan. His proof was a clip of what he said was an intercepted conversation between Indian operatives and militants, which sounded inauthentic.
So just listen to this audio call.
बलूचिस्तान से लेके लाहौर तक मेरा जो नेट है बैठा हुआ है.
Social media users said the whole thing felt scripted, acted out. The Pakistani military has been ramping up its accusations against India for the past few years, but they chose now, in the aftermath of an attack in Indian-administered Kashmir, to make the evidence they had public. The mainstream media there are lapping it up.
DGISPR ने अपनी प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस की और उसके अंदर बताया किस तरह हिंदुस्तान का नेटवर्क ऑपरेट कर रहा है.
The military's talking points have been reliably relayed on Pakistani news channels, pushing back against threats of military retaliation, mocking the effectiveness of a pause in a water-sharing agreement with India, and reminding their neighbors of Pakistan's nuclear capabilities. It isn't unusual to see Pakistani media in lockstep with military and intelligence figures. Those two institutions hold significant power and are known for coming down hard on the news media if they step out of line. But they have less control over social media. Pakistani meme makers are having a field day there, satirizing the threats coming from the Indian airwaves, joking that India could not possibly do any more damage to the country than Pakistan's own leadership already has.
Thanks, Ryan. This past week, Donald Trump completed a tumultuous first 100 days of his second term at the White House. The pace has been relentless, sweeping trade tariffs getting announced, then pulled back. Scores of undocumented immigrants shipped out to a mega prison in El Salvador. Talk of annexing neighboring lands, countries, and declarations of war against the mainstream media, universities, and law firms. Developments that all go out on the Trump administration's social media accounts, which have taken on a distinct style and tone. Donald Trump is not just the face of everything. His curious brand of brash, inappropriate, even nasty phrasing is all over the tweets and memes that get shared. Some posts border on vicious, mocking the victims of Trump's most stringent policies. The Listening Post's Meenakshi Ravi now on the Trump White House's memification of cruelty.